All righty, guys. Well, good afternoon, and welcome to Maynard Costerisan's CPE for Lunch series with AvidXchange. My name is Seth Kamuller, and I'm with AvidXchange, of course. And today, what we're going to be talking about to you all is really how to build a world-class AP department with AP automation, and really kind of understand what that means. During this session, we'll run through a few best AP practices for you, and I'll also provide a quick glimpse into our solution. And of course, we'll end with a live Q&A for you guys. So we want to make sure your questions get answered, and if anything does not get answered, we'll make sure we cover that for you. A little bit about myself. My name is Seth Kamuller. I'm a regional sales executive or consultant with AvidXchange. Essentially, my job involves demonstrating the benefits of AP automation to middle market companies. I enjoy sharing best practices, but also, like discussing, AP automation, payment automation with financial professionals like yourself. A little bit about my background. I grew up in the great state of Illinois, kind of. In a small town called Peoria, Illinois. Most people only know it as the headquarters for Caterpillar. After college, I moved up to the city of Chicago and spent a number of fun years next to Wrigley Field. I worked for an insurance company, so my background was actually kind of doing some just basic office reporting work. If you've ever seen the movie Office Space and know the character Peter, that was kind of like my job for 4 years. So wasn't quite sure what I was doing, but I knew I wanted to live there, so that's kind of why I took it. And from there, I decided to kind of break away a little bit. I decided to get it. I was actually always had a strong love for art, and I was actually a photographer for a little over 3.5 years. I got to do a lot of publications, magazines work in the city of Chicago, as well as did some international work and got to travel some throughout the U.S. So it was a good time to do it, and it was a lot of fun. But I would say, like many people, 2009 changed the game for me. A lot of people wanted my services for a lot less. My health insurance that I was paying for my own kept going up. But I knew I loved interacting with people. I knew I loved working with people and just consulting people and whatever field I was in. So I decided to get into sales. And from there, I worked in the payroll, HR, time and attendance space, or what's now known as the HCM space. Worked for 2 providers and had a great experience in the small market as well as the middle market. And then one day I met, I met a friend who actually worked for AvidXchange, and he told me a lot about it, and I learned a lot about it. I was very interested in, and I'll tell you why. If you look at a lot of the business processes out there, I came from the payroll world, where a lot of times you're, switching out one provider for another, where AP automation is relatively, it's a newer type thinking, and I would say it was one of the last business processes to really be automated. So I saw a great opportunity there, and I've really been happy with working with Avid, and like I said, I look forward to the future, and obviously, what we bring to a company's AP team. So that's enough about me. We'll get into why you're actually here. So to the agenda today, we're going to really cover a number of things. To begin with, we're going to discuss the problem with paper. And then what each role should consider with AP automation. And what I mean by each role is CFO, controller, or AP manager. And of course, how AP automation benefits each role. And, how do you know when it's time to automate? What does it look like? What things should you consider? And of course, a quick glimpse into our system, so you have an idea of what it looks like. Essentially, it's a little taste, if you will. But that is the agenda for today. And please, of course, submit any questions to the question box, and we'll get those at the end. So first thing we're going to take a look at here is really the problem with paper. So you look at some of these bubbles here. Now, some of these, no, maybe not all, are some of the problems that you might experience with your current AP process. You might begin with accepting invoices through methods like email or fax, interoffice deliveries, or maybe somebody drops one on your desk and it gets underneath a stack of paper that's piling up. Also, too, when AP processes are not centralized, how do you get those approved? Sometimes it's like, playing a game of, maybe someone's the approver one day, maybe they're not. So, visibility and who's approving, might be a problem. And of course, once they're received, how do they get to the AP manager or team member, or if they're in an email, or is there an audit trail, or is it just, the email being that audit trail. So kind of keep those things in mind as certain issues. And of course, the big one is that invoices then are manually typed into the accounting system or scanned maybe via a management software. But the reality is, those services are there to, essentially take care of the paper process, but there's still time sensitive tasks associated. And of course, just look at some of these examples right here. Just photocopying for backup if you don't have a management software, getting the invoice approved, storing the paper. What if you miss an invoice? What if you don't pay it on time and you don't get that discount or rebate? Cost of a duplicate payment, and then of course just all around approval times or time spent for the AP team and getting all these processes done. So kind of keep some of those problems in mind as you kind of look at the current AP situation of where you might be at. So real quick, just some trends in accounts payable right now. So it is 2018. It is the year of the year of all blockchain, Bitcoin, all these cryptocurrencies, and all this crazy stuff that's happening out there. But as you can see right here, what is the dominant way that invoices are received still today? Paper. So the reality is in 2018, paper has still not gone away. It's actually increased. So, an important thing to really consider is that, even if you have some type of document management system in place, the manual-based processes or time-sensitive processes still might exist for you guys. And again, it's just, without some degree of automation, you're gonna be running into these kind of roadblocks, and especially with the fact that, like I said, in 2018, we're still dealing with more paper than anything. So, speaking a little bit on the manual process, according to Ardent Partners, receiving invoices via email is really no better than even receiving paper. Because the reality is you still have to take that information, extract it, and convert that data into the digital format, or bring it into your accounting system manually. So they kind of bucket that as even with email and fax and paper, 70% of invoices are still being received in a manual format. So again, even if with a management process in place, it still does not take away the bulk of the time-sensitive tasks. But we'll talk more about what that process means later, but just to give you an idea of kind of the numbers that we're dealing with. And of course, other trends in accounts payable really come around how payments are made. So if you look at the four types on the left here, you'll see commercial card, wire, ACH, and check. So what sticks out to me is that, hey, look, enterprise over here, they've got, a lot of, ACH, which is good. But if you look at the small market and middle market and overall averages, again, what unfortunately is still king, it's paper checks. So again, you have to think about, the time it takes to sign all the checks, write the checks, envelope, stamps, ink. So again, even in 2018, you're still looking at, paper is still dominant. So again, when looking into automation, that's really what we want. It's one of the main things that we'd like to take away as well. So I would say, and if you're thinking about the verticals that you're exposed to, keep in mind, manufacturing is still a little bit behind in the automation side. So they're still doing things a little bit behind the times a little bit. Healthcare is a little bit more progressive, and of course, finance and any kind of banking industries are a little bit more up to speed with virtual card payments and of course ACHs. So it does depend on the industry, but just keep in mind there are some commonalities between them. And as far as B2B payments goes, the most efficient way to make a payment is through a virtual card or an ACH payment. They say that the biggest area of fraud is with manual checks, or people printing their own checks on site. So people might say, well, I press the second my check, I print them on site, and go, well, how sure are you? You're not subjecting yourself to fraud. I mean, you hear stories in the news about people not catching there's issues of fraud until a year and a half later. So I mean, I never want to say that automating the process is 100%, but it's pretty close, where you really eliminate the risk for fraud as well. So I would say keep that in mind. Again, virtual cards and ACH are even becoming more accepted, but again, there's still a lot of checks going out. So understand how that works, how that's happening for your business, and to ensure that, maybe there's a vulnerability to a fraudulent situation. Next, we're going to look at what each role within the AP automation cycle, thinks about, what they should consider with automation. And we're going to look at three. So we're going to look at the CFO or VP of Finance. It's a lot of times they're the same person. Of course, the controller and the AP manager, and just understand, that their goals, what their vision is for the accounts payable process, and just kind of what's going through each person's head, right? What are they thinking about? So keep in mind, what keeps the CFO up at night? What a CFO is concerned about is keeping a business profitable. They want to make good business decisions. They want to reduce costs. They want to remain compliant so they don't get fined. They want to have visibility into data. So again, they want to make real-time decisions for the business, and they want to understand, okay, how can I make these decisions with the information I have? Is the information that I have accurate? And is it up to date? So, again, these are just some of the things that kind of keep a CFO up at night as they make decisions to keep a company profitable. So when thinking about automation, a CFO should consider really that AP automation will help them reduce fraud, give them greater visibility and accuracy. And then they'll know how much money is going in and out for budgeting and cash flow purposes. And based upon, this knowledge, they can dedicate certain resources, certain projects, and they can scale for the proper growth because they know how much they're working with. So that is really why a CFO or VP of Finance loves talking about automation or loves the visibility into that. The next area is, or the next person I should say, is the controller. So what the controller kind of thinks about is, how can we streamline our AP processes to improve cash flow? Are there any bottlenecks that are causing inefficiencies? Are there any that we're unaware of? Maybe they've been doing things the same way for so long they don't realize it. The things that a controller should really kind of keep in mind is, since they have a little bit of a narrower focus, is that they want to have a central resource or a central area where they can access invoice and payment data. Workflows. So they want to know that, hey, if an invoice comes in, it goes to the right person. And then again, faster processing times. Again, compliance is also big for a controller. Again, they don't want to get fined either. And of course, sometimes people say, well, my AP person spends, 4 hours every day or 4 hours every week, sorting through invoices. Well, what if it could be, next to nothing or nothing? What other value intensive tasks, could they do? The last piece of the puzzle is really the AP manager, and they're really concerned with the day-to-day operations of accounts payable. So they want to focus on kind of how each member of the team, does their job, and kind of what keeps them up at night is, they don't want to track down, approvers for all these invoices. They want to ensure they're paid on time, right? That's part of their job. They want to get these prompt pay discounts, these rebates. If they're missing invoices and they can't approve them, they're not going to get those discounts. And then the reality of it is that not many people get a finance degree and go into AP. So AP teams tend to be a little bit smaller now, and with the increased volumes of paper, even still today, the volumes are increasing, but the team members are not. So it's just how are they doing more with essentially less? And what they should really consider is the audit trail. So ensure that, hey, I know where an invoice is going, who touched it, what's been done. So again, there's nothing that can come back to them, but also that they know everything's accurate. And then, of course, give their AP team time back on their day to do more value tasks. Other things they could do in the AP department, the finance department, really give the employee the value they deserve as well. And, of course, reporting. So anytime there's a report that needs to be run, have access to that data and ensure that they can, search for an invoice that was, from 3 months ago. Just know that data is available and they can access it for questions and other reporting purposes. But, again, visibility is important for them as well. So what do you do when you know it's time? So some things to consider for you is that you want to understand, your costs and potential savings. So this really kind of comes back with an ROI on kind of how you're doing business today and as far as AP goes. And what that can really mean are a few things. So you want to understand invoice volumes. How many invoices do you process a month on average? That really helps to understand your costs. And then also, how many payments do you have per month, for example? And then, of course, how long it takes, to get through all these invoices. What's the average time? It can really help you get a projected ROI, and also how much are you spending on envelope stamps, things like that. And of course, if you're looking to automate too, remember that a lot of times your IT department may need to be involved. You got to understand how much time am I going to need to allocate of theirs to ensure that they don't get doubled up on projects or but your needs are met. So it's just understanding a lot of variables like around invoice numbers, payment numbers, IT resources, and just time it takes to get these invoices approved. And of course, you want to understand your system. So what accounting, first thing you want to ask is, what accounting system are you working with, right? You want to understand what that means. A lot of times, AP automators can have an API direct link to that accounting system. Sometimes it's maybe a file base, but you want to understand exactly what's involved with your accounting system and how that process would work when you begin to automate. Again, that's a lot where your IT department would come into play. But again, understanding what system you're using and the unique requirements around it will help you make those decisions as well. And of course, a big piece is, you want to turn your suppliers into partners. Essentially, what I mean by that is that, you want to remind your vendors that upgrading to an automation can help cut costs. How? They get paid faster. Who wouldn't want to get paid faster? Who would not want to avoid making a phone call that says, "Where's my payment? Where's my payment? What's going on with this invoice?" You want to ensure, this will make your partners happy and make your suppliers happy. Because again, you're not having to spend time, getting them paid. They can almost get paid immediately. And I would suggest maybe creating an onboarding plan or some kind of communication with them to let them know that you are making a change. And of course, you want to assess areas for improvement and successes, of course, because once you go live, you're going to run into things. You're going to be like, okay, is this working as expected? So just kind of create some benchmark goals. I always suggest a 30, 60, 90-day, kind of window to say, hey, what do we expect by this date? What do we expect by this date? To ensure that everything's going according to plan as you move into, automation. But once you get the ball rolling, you wish you had done it years ago. So just kind of keep some of those things in mind as you really move into the automation process. So what does a typical AP process look like? Now, you're going to see every bubble here. Now, not every bubble might pertain to you, but again, this is more of a typical process. So take a look here. The invoice comes in, it's opened, it's routed, coded, approved, then it's entered in the accounting system, but posted to the GL, and then of course the invoice is filed. So what I want to explain here is that everything with the blue square and the green X is what AvidXchange takes off your plate. We take off those manual, time-intensive tasks, and everything that is really in the blue is essentially what we leave to you. So what we do is we allow you to code, approve, and then post your GL. So we take off all the manual, time-intensive tasks, but we still give you and leave you with the control. We also have some smart coding functionality that can make that much easier for you, but just understand that, again, our goal is to really take off these manual time-intensive tasks. So kind of keep that in mind as you evaluate your own AP process as to what gaps and holes you might find. So a big thing too is to understand how invoices come into AvidXchange. So they get in 3 ways: email, where they can send directly to AvidXchange, and we bring those into the Avid portal for you. You can scan invoices in, or we can designate a lockbox and we can actually receive paper. So we still receive a lot by paper, but obviously the goal is to get that to shrink, but we can receive them by paper. And once we receive the invoice, we extract all the header detail around the invoice, including the PO, and submit it to AvidInvoice. This essentially initiates the approval process based upon the rules and conditions that you've specified within the system. So again, it's customizable. It's the way you want it. You do not have to make any changes to your process, as we can adapt to it. So kind of keep that in mind as well. So what we're going to go over next here is a little bit or a glimpse into the system itself. So what you'll see here is this screen represents an AvidXchange screen of invoices requiring action. Now you can configure it to see only the ones that you want to see or that's only important to you, and you can also set it up to where if all you're doing is approving, you just select the invoices here, click it and approve, and you're done. The great thing about Avid is the technology. It's HTML5, so anytime you're on a mobile phone, tablet, laptop, computer, it adheres to that screen. It allows you to have that versatility and functionality, especially as people travel a lot and there's a lot of remote employees. So then from there, it moves into the coding page. So as I mentioned before, we extract all the header detail out of the invoice. And then you can also download the hard copy if you want to, but all the information is taken from the invoice and brought into the header. And of course, as I mentioned, we have some smart coding tools. So we have the default GL. So every time you receive an invoice from a supplier, 100% of that invoice amount will populate to a specific code. We can also have a use previous feature. So essentially it remembers how the previous invoice was coded. Again, once an invoice is entered in the system, it breaks that down by unique descriptions, GLs, and percents allocated. Or you can even import distributions. So you can import, you can populate a template and import those lines for an invoice as well. So also include GLs, descriptions, and accounts allocated. And what I like about this too is that if you look here, you can type in the account code or the English language, and it will bring up essentially a list of what you have. So maybe there's a lesser user in the system that, I need to approve this invoice or code this invoice, but I haven't used the system in a while. What is that GL code? Well, let me type it up and see if it pops up. Oh, great, I need 150. Oh, building popped up. Great, I see building. That's the code I want. Now I can select it. So the smart coding tools really kind of speed up the coding process for you. Okay. This piece is the attachments tab. So while this is important, is that you can attach any documentation that's important to the invoice. And one of the cool features about it is you can actually use your cell phone. So you can actually take a photo and attach it right from your phone. So rather than having to scan a document, email it to yourself, browse and upload it to your desktop, and then upload it, you can just snap it right from your phone. So it's kind of a cool little tool to ensure that you can attach things much quicker. Again, the whole point is, one of the points is speeding up and ensure that you are doing things faster. One of the great things about our system, which I love, is that our workflow ability. So why I love this is that not only do we not have to pick apart your current workflow process, we can take what you have and build it directly into the system. So or we could help improve upon a workflow that you're trying to build or some of the processes that you have. So again, it just allows for a completely automated workflow process. And you can even set it up too, where emails can be sent out if there's any escalation issues. So let's say, for example, an invoice is, you have 3 days to approve this invoice and hits day 4. An email will go out to that manager saying, hey, look, you need to approve these invoices. The system will automatically do that for you and even show up on escalation reports as well. And of course, you can do conditional workflows also. So what that means is, let's say an invoice is say, hey, I'm over $5,000. I got to go to this approver or I got to go to a different approver for approval. So the system can recognize that as well. And the cool thing about it too, if someone is out or anything like that, you can also do an ad hoc approver, and you could say, okay, you can log into the system, route that invoice to another approver kind of on the spot, which is great because every now and then people get sick, people are out, there's things happen. So there's ways to make those changes as well and have invoices approved on the fly. But just know if you do that, it's not going to change your workflow process that you inherently built into the system. So keep that in mind too, as you think about your workflow process. And the history tab, this is also great, especially if you've ever experienced an audit or have a client that's ever experienced anything like this. That people want to know, well, what happened here? What happened there? Well, this tells you everything that happened from the invoice. Now, what this does is a few things. It keeps the company clear. So if there's ever any issues with it or any differences in opinion on what happened, you know exactly what happened, and it keeps people honest as well. So if somebody goes, I've never received that invoice, well, it says here you did on March 18th of 2018. So again, it's a complete audit trail built into the system that cannot be altered. So no one can go in here and change the date, change the time, change the amount. It cannot be altered. So that's another great feature as well. Another piece to the puzzle is our reporting, or the reporting ability. So you can report on specific invoices and criteria. You can actually you can create a quick report on pending approval invoices. You can create reports on GL vendor reports, budgets, diagnostics, contract reports. You can even do escalation reports. But I guess the point is you can have the information all on a report along with the image itself, and you can customize that report as well. So maybe there's certain information that you don't want somebody to see. You can customize that and export that into a PDF. So again, access to information, visibility, all right here within the reporting tool. So it allows you to check history and ensure that, again, there's no questions. So, we saw a glimpse of the system. We saw why it's important and what you should consider when looking into automation. And, whether it's indexing invoices, new products, or providing support, AvidXchange has really, come a long way to give you the power over your payables. AvidXchange is we just partnered with MasterCard for B2B payments. We've received a lot of investment money. We're considered a unicorn in the fintech space. And what that means is, we're here to stay. We're not going to be acquired. No one's going to take us away. And we do a phenomenal job and have one of the largest, vendor networks in the country. So just keep in mind, for AP automation, Avid's here to stay, and we're constantly improving. So with that, I will send it over to Brittany.
Thank you, Seth. So I know there was a lot of great content in there, and thank you all for sticking around. So we will begin to take questions now. And we do have a few questions, Seth, already. So the first question is, what methods of payment can my vendors choose from?
Got it. So there's a few methods. One is virtual card, enhanced ACH, which comes with remittance data, and of course, the classic paper check. Once we identify how your vendor wants to be paid, we store and maintain that data for you in our own database. So once we go pay that vendor again, we know exactly how they want to be paid.
Great. Thank you, Seth. And we had another question, and it's, can I send all of my vendor payments through AvidXchange Pay?
Absolutely. So we can actually accommodate all your payments, and we can also do it where we pay only the ones that you want AvidXchange to pay. Now, there are some payments that you might want to keep to keep on your end or execute yourself, and some of these could include, wire payments, employee reimbursements, dividends to shareholders, cross-border payments, and employee payroll, for example.
Thank you, Seth. We had another question that came in, and it was, can I still print checks?
You bet. So we do have a self-managed payment option. It essentially allows you to print MICR checks on blank check stock. So we always give you that option, or we always have that option ready for you. So just know that if by chance a vendor or supplier does not take, ACH or virtual card, know that your payment will still be in good hands by us, and we can create a check for you.
Great, thank you, Seth. We had another question, and it's asking, what is the difference between AvidXchange and a document management application?
So this is a phenomenal question because sometimes we get that confused, or people get that confused. If you think about what a document management's primary goal is, it's to save a document that used to be paper, digitize it, and put it into a database where it can be stored and retrieved, right? So it's a storage system, basically. Where AP Automation's primary goal is to replace manual steps. So from opening mail, from manual keying in data, from routing for approvals. So essentially the outcome with Avid is people's time and effort that used to be spent on manual processes can now be applied at different aspects of a business. So it gives you back your time versus, just scanning in pieces of paper for storage.
Great. We had another question that came in, and it's asking, what is the typical implementation timeline and process for AvidXchange?
Got it. So on average, implementations take 45 days or less. We have a guarantee associated, so there's a little bit of money back on your implementation. I know that's always a question, but usually 45 days or less. But sometimes timelines are dependent on your ERP system that you use. As I mentioned, some have very easy APIs. Some are file-based, and some accounting systems are a little bit more, I would say, lesser known. So they might take a little extra work from us and your IT people.
Great, thank you. And we have time to take one more question. So the question is, will my invoice approval process need to change?
Got it. So I think I hinted at this a little bit. So we'll essentially work with you on the way you want it set up. Now, that can mean a few things. We can help you create one from scratch, or we can build upon your existing rules in place. But there's essentially no need to change. We just take your current process and we automate it. So another key benefit of the solution.
Great. Thank you, Seth. And so that's all the time that we have today for questions. Again, I want to thank everyone for attending our webinar on building a world-class AP department. Seth, do you have anything else to add before we close?
No, I just want to say, thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. And of course, as Brittany said, happy to address any questions that you have. My goal is really the consultative approach. I want to understand, the process, how you guys do things today, and kind of give you the best practices. It's where the value comes into play. But again, Avid is a great place to be, and it's here to stay. And I thank everybody for having me here today.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Hope everyone has a great day.